In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
Populous skies, troubled ground. With your hosts, Gypsy King and Dr. Nothing.
Because what's going on now is you have a lot of people coming together and stuff like that, but at the same time, you have people there, infantry.
Infantry.
And it's a lot of, what's going on is, what I have been watching on the news is that people who are protesting peacefully, and then you have other groups joining in and becoming violent. Right. I also heard and seen reports of people driving cars that are the license plates have been scratched down, windows tinted, and they have like rocks and stuff like that in the cars. And I witnessed it by watching the news and hearing people saying these things. And what is going on is that you see people in communities are arming themselves against protesters, but at the same time they are discriminating and targeting black people. Not protesters, but rioters, I should say. And then they targeting black people, like Pilsen communities, but how the Mexican community, Latino community, our little village in Pilsen are against black people in general. And there's been people posting stuff on Facebook saying that be careful going into Pilsen, stuff like that. And what's really going on is that I've seen a lack of organization to deal with being infiltrated. Because once you're out and the protesters are out and about and they doing what they're doing, and then you start to see disarray going on. Those same protesters have to make a stand against the rioters. You know, and that's going to be hard. But at the same time, that's how their voice is being drowned out. That opens the door to military force. That opens the door to people going against the protesters. That opens the dialogue between people who are not protesting but fucking just watching and seeing the white supremacy comes out, the right wing, that brings all of them together. Whether these people are on the fence or not, they can always say that these people were violent. Now, the peaceful demonstration that's going on now, hopefully that will drown out everybody. But not too many businesses and the people who have their stores smashed and looted are so forgiving. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things going on, and that's outside of the pandemic itself. So it's a lot going on, and right now I don't want people to lose sight of the people who came together in the protests around the world. You see, what I found in the black community is that despite the fact that white people are protesting with them, black community has a tendency to just disregard that in the long run. In the long run, it's black versus white. You see what I'm saying? Regardless of
So you said left versus right or fact versus right? I want to make sure I got it clear.
black versus white.
Right. So either black or white. There's no gray.
Yeah,
That's
the long one.
with.
Yeah. So regardless of who comes together in this protest, you see all these white people with black people. 3 months from now, you know, is that going to still be there? Do they remember the white man and the black man coming together against the police? Will they remember that? So it's not just to commemorate the coming together of solidarity of people, but it's to keep the movement going and bring together all races that are being bullied or by the police or stuff like that. It's just by the government in general.
The narrative of the movement is consistently to get rid of the police. And this is kind of reminding me of that scene in the movie Back to the Future 2 where Biff is president and there's riots on the streets and chaos. There's no order to anything. Nobody's protected. Everybody has to fend for themselves.
I think that the movement is not to get rid of the police. I think it's a subgroup movement under that.
Yeah, that's
the movement is for justice or
it seems
police brutality.
is hijacking the entire movement.
Yeah, I think a lot of things is being hijacked. I say say for instance, take a look at the people who were in arms protesting to be reopened and how white supremacist groups merged with that. So not necessarily a person who's white with a gun is not racist at all, but somehow that person is marching, and just probably a few feet from him, you have a white supremacist marching right along in the same group, you know? And it's like, okay, they with us, and we protesting, you know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing. But now it's that white supremacist group has infiltrated this movement in regards to arming protesters and getting them to riot, or even starting a riot and looting themselves. There's no way to differentiate who's who in this protest.
And if you see the rioters, you don't see any black rioters, at least in the footage and video I've seen. They're all white folk rioting and bringing buildings down.
I've seen black, white. It's mixed. But the problem is there's no way to determine who's who. And I think if you have the youth involved in this protest, there's a huge lack of organization. I'm not saying they're not organized. I'm just saying maintaining who's who, whether it's the color of the shirt, because anybody can wear a Black Lives Matter shirt.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Anybody can fit into an Atlas or Antifa, which isn't even an established group. It's kind of like nebulous, if you ask me.
But another thing is that did you see fireworks? Did you see bricks?
Yeah.
And did you see cocktails being thrown and stuff like that?
Well,
where the fuck did you get bricks from?
Right. That's a smoking gun that this is a trap that nobody saw. People just took advantage.
Right. Where the fuck do you get bricks from? Who has fireworks in, it just turned June. Who has fireworks in May?
Right. You had to go across the border in Indiana to get fireworks legally, well, illegally in this state.
But still, I mean, being a state of pandemic, fireworks are not an essential business.
Yeah, that's definitely something to look at. Really, the biggest smoking gun is the bricks.
Yeah, and the cocktail. Who's gonna buy and waste some liquor on a cocktail? Nobody in the black community does that shit.
Right.
That shit just came out of nowhere. You see, that's just some crazy shit. Of all the looting that I've seen and people burning and breaking things, they were setting fires, like literally light a match or take a lighter. Nobody's doing no fucking cocktail. So that came out of nowhere. And then who are the people dressed in black with no stigmas or any government identification? Even that was in the media. They didn't know who they belonged to or what agency or whatever. They just standing there in the united front against the protest. So there's a lot of things that are concerning. I'm not worried about the protesters per se. I'm worried about what's going on around them. Peaceful protests, do your thing. But what's going around your environment and you don't see this trouble thing going on. A lot of protesters have band together against rioters and stuff like that now. But at the same time, they have to become aware of what had happened and how it happened for future protests. Because right now there's a protest going on in Green Bay. Everywhere there's protests going, you have the peaceful protest, then they subside, then you have the rioters. It's like they take it turns.
Yeah, this thing is more organized than the protesters. You know, the peace
Exactly.
This thing's way more organized. I think this was planned way ahead of time, and they were just waiting for that opportunity to mobilize and hijack the movement.
Yeah. So then here's another thing that's concerning. The leaders in the communities have remained silent for a long period of time. And usually when something happens like this and then it becomes widespread, then it's city by city, state by state, the leaders usually come out front either to maintain peace, come out for the families and stuff like that. Al Sharpton is the only one that came out, and that was like a couple of days ago. I don't hear anything from the religious communities. I don't hear anything from any form of organized community besides Black Lives Matter. And it's maybe I'm not there to really document who's who or what's going on. That's another thing. So I'm a little ignorant because I'm not there in Chicago. I'm just observing what I see on the news. But however, when people are taken front and center and the media is thirsty for anybody to talk to them, I have yet to see a leader in the religious community come out.
That's the thing that we're living with, is we don't have a leader that can galvanize people's concerns.
Yeah, that's why I said, fuck it. Let's do this shit. And it's not just to tell people what to do. I just want to come out and just give people a heads up and then see where people are at and see what direction they want to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the people are arrested. Now you got what you want per se. This trial's still going to be months going down the road. But how are you going? What do we need to make that change? We can't fire the whole police force and then recruit some more people. That's not feasible. You can't change the system. You can't have the system change itself because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's the problem, and I think the problem is that if the KKK could so easily infiltrate and hijack the movement, what do you think they've done with the police department across the nation? You think that they wouldn't think about targeting that ever, early on in the 60s and 70s?
The FBI has already informed the government that the KKK, white supremacists, or whoever have infiltrated the police force. This is known. So that's that.
Right.
They already know that, so they have no problem. Another thing with that, you have the fraternity order of police. How many black people who are police officers who feel that the death, you know what I'm saying? If you are witnessing, you're a minority, if you're witnessing police officers killing other minorities, where's their voice at? So is there fear among the blue line? If they cross over the blue line, will they be treated as traitors? So that's the fraternity order of police involved. And you always hear about how corrupted police officers are, and then how bad they treat each other and stuff. If you could get away with shit, you could get away with shit, no matter what color your skin is.
Yeah.
If you with us, you're against us. If you have that mentality as a force.
Well, you threaten their job, or you don't provide backup when they need it. That's what they're dealing with.
So, I mean, in order to defeat that, you just need another police force. Competition.
Okay.
That's the only answer, because you cannot dismantle the police force at the same time while you trying to have peace in your community. You can't fire the whole police force without anybody to replace them.
Right. There needs to be accountability in people's positions within the police force, and there needs to be a table between the public and the police.
Either that, or fucking create a citizen draft that every citizen in the United States of America has to be in the police.
Well, they have the Police Accountability Board in Chicago, and I guess they're supposed to. I'm not supposed to have like public members being represented there, and that has not proven to be effective.
This is all bullshit.
Yeah, I mean even that is hijacked the same way that this movement.
See, I learned a long time ago dealing with CTS and CCC that when they have these little committees and stuff like that, it's all for show. When you have anybody able to sit down with anybody in a position of power, they lose sight. They feel like, oh, I'm here with the mayor, I'm talking to the mayor, and they go do this and they'll do that. And they don't realize that they're being pacified. That should be doing good for 2 months, and then next thing you know, they realize it's bullshit, and then they bounce out of the whole thing entirely. This fake laugh, fake smile, and weak handshake.
What needs to come down is a blue wall of silence.
So that shit ain't never coming down. You gotta be realistic on that. But if they have competition and you have another police force that the people can hold accountable or stuff like that, then they'll change the whole thing. So for instance, like the Jews. The Jews have their own police force in New York. They police in their own community. That's been going on for way before I was born. I think a little competition is needed.
confrontation in a cordial manner. You got to corner these folks until they break open and admit to what's going on. The confrontation that's going on right now is physical, and it's not effective. It's going against the movement.
I agree. Nothing is effective right now. You also have to understand that even with the police, if the change comes, it won't happen in our lifetime. I mean, I take that back. It will happen late in our lifetime. Systematic racism is institutionalized. It's basically like Coke and Pepsi. You can either go from one subject to another subject. How many people will create another subject? You know? You going to be with the system or against the system? How many people will create a new system? We need a new system in place. And that's just it. You can't have a system govern itself. It's impossible for a system to change if it's governing itself. That's just like telling the kids to look after itself and be good. You know what I'm saying? It's never going to change if we're trying to get the system to change itself.
Right.
So the people who are in the system, either they're racist or they stuck in a culture or the belief, the same thing. You have to change their mind. You have to change their boss's mind. You got to change everybody's mind in that whole fucking system. So you need to tell, it's going to be impossible to change the minds of all the Americans in the United States of America.
We have to create waves in another direction, and everything will vibrate to those waves. And right now, those waves are confusion, fear of the unknown. What we need is more integration and less segregation. Not just between whites and blacks, but like all kinds of people.
Yeah. But another thing is that we have to find what is common amongst all people. Use what's common, the common, what we have in common to unite us, and use that.
Yeah, there's certainly needs that are common. What about qualities? What qualities are common?
Yeah.
You've got to define what those commonalities are, and get people to get to their roots. We got to get back to our roots. That's what's driving this thing into a poisonous direction, is nobody knows what they stand on.
Here's the thing.
Poison is the roots. We could be chopping at the leaves all we want. The tree will still produce poisoned leaves.
Yeah, that's true.
So what is the root of the issue here? I think a lot of it got infiltrated during the founding of this country.
The thing is this, I've been looking at the history of racism, and I took a step back and stopped dealing with the race for a minute and just look at the culture of white privilege and the entitlement and the root of the entitlement. And what I've gathered is that when the Europeans left the British, they came here to America. They took the land from the natives. The first thing they did was give word back to the homeland and tell people about the people here in America. And then they said they were savages. They walk around half naked, blah blah blah.
Right.
And they created a fear tactic for the people at home. And then they call the natives heathen. So then they have a religious motive, a cultural motive,
So
to come out.
perception.
Hmm?
Social perception. That's
Right,
created. It's manufactured, is what it is.
right. So I call it brainwash.
Yeah.
Then when they came here in America and they took whatever they did, now the pilgrims came over. People who wanted freedom from religion oppression, freedom from society oppressing them, from the kings and queens and all that shit. So when they came over here and they had slaves and stuff, they said, look, we're all white here, but we are all trying to find a living here. So we're going to group together and we're going to make ourselves lords of this land. And then we're going to make Native Americans and our slaves lesser than us. So now they have used the same tactics that the kings and queens, dukes and lords and all that shit used against the peasants. They made the slaves peasants. They made Native Americans peasants. And then that's how racism became.
Yeah.
Because now you are not higher than a person because of stature, because of money, because of wealth, because of the color of your skin. That secures your place in society. But above that, you still have those social structures amongst the whites. But the poor white will always be above a black or a native or even a Mexican or a Chinese. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that security blanket became white privilege today. That's where that entitlement comes. Because you got to understand, that's culturally raised and passed down from generation to generation. Think about how long slavery was. For kids to look at a black person and treat them less than human, less than an animal. The kids could get away with that. When a person came and called a white man a liar. You see? So generations and generations bred into that. That culture never died. And that's something that people don't understand. This culture. And then when you see people saying a black man, not a man, has threatened my life, but a black man has threatened my life. Call the cops. So the skin color is feared upon, and that goes right back to how they describe the natives, how they became savages and stuff like that. So black people are the savages because of the color of their skin. They this and that. Now you have that belief, and that's passed down in every institution, whether it's education, your workplace. It's that culture. And the majority of people who are running that culture are white. Now, that's not to take away from black people, Mexican, any other race from being racist against anybody. You see? It doesn't always, it came from whites, but it didn't stay. In America, it came from whites, but it didn't stay. Because people overseas and Africa and all that kind of stuff, they prejudice and stuff too. You have people in Africa who are Ethiopian and don't like Eritreans. You see?
Yeah.
So racism still exists regardless of where you live and what color skin you are. I'm just focusing on America. And then that's just bread. You know? So when people say if you want to end the systematic racism, How? How are you going to do that? What steps are you going to take to do that? You replace if you replace everybody and you bring new people in, who's to say they're not racist? You ain't going to ask everybody in the world if you racist, raise your hand, and then you step over here like they're going to actually do that shit.
No, and people that are racist do not even acknowledge it in themselves.
Exactly.
That's the other element.
So, I mean, people have to be very realistic in dealing with this. Because if not, people are going to be disappointed. They're going to lead to anger and mistrust and untrust.
Now, is there some organization per se that might be pulling the strings in this cultural conditioning and in an effort to keep this culture going?
I'm going to tell you like this, man. And I'm going to be straight up with you. It's by household.
It's the what?
I don't care. It's by household. Because regardless of institutions, it's the people that come into those institutions that keep it going. You know? If, for instance, let's say for an all-white school, and you're the first black person in the school, and right now they reacted to you differently than they react to other people. Then you would say, oh, they racist. Okay, that's a valid point. But, say for instance, the institution that you're in is mixed with various people of all races. And you notice racism that is there. But it's not just coming from white, it's coming from other races, other minorities. Because they are adhering to what is considered ethical of the institution, and they're going against your stereotype.
Yeah.
What they believe, you know what I'm saying?
It's always whites and blacks in conflict, but that's not the reality of it. You've got other ethnicities that are also fearful of now. South
Exactly.
Asian, for example, is a big one. Other types of Asians, they feed into the propaganda that's being fed to them, the fear mongering. They stay away from black people.
Yeah.
There's very little integration between Asians and black.
Exactly. Jews.
I have a question because I've been researching this recently. Why did African Americans have to create their own lodge for Freemasonry?
Because Masons do not accept the African community.
Exactly.
And Masons only believe that white people could be Masons.
Right.
A full Mason. Because black Masons cannot be 33. They cannot reach the highest level of Mason.
Right, beyond 33. Now, there's 360 degrees. Now, what was this country founded on? The principles of scriptures that were written by Freemasons. Did you come across that?
Well, here's the thing. Well, people fail to realize that Masonry is rooted in Christianity and science. Masonry has not separated itself from science. Because they're a religious order and science order as well.
Right.
So that's what people fail to realize. They think that they are some form of a cult or anything like that. They keep back to the old days because way back in the day, religion and science was one until the Catholic Church separated that.
Right. That's Masonry. Freemasonry was founded on the principle that man could be like God.
I mean,
rather than
maybe. I'm not really sure about that. But in the Bible, Jesus told the Pharisees that you are God. So there's a conflict in understanding the terminology of what a God is. So you could debate that, but you also understand that Freemasonry and Masonry, how can I say that? They have the same roots, but I think Freemasonry is a little bit more dominant.
yeah.
I have seen Masons black in Europe. I have seen black Masons in Europe, you know, but they're not the majority. But here in America,
And they create their own. That's the thing.
no. Here in America, they created their own. But I've seen full-fledged Masons that are black in Europe, at least one. I was watching a documentary on it.
My question to that is that lodge a combination of several different kinds of races, or is it just black folk?
There's different races. There's, my friends, I have two friends on my Facebook that I made. One is Filipino, and another one is I think Latino, Puerto Rican. It's black. I have yet to see a mixed race of Masons here in America in one lodge.
Well, I'm kind of curious. Is a lodge in Europe, and is the say the Prince Hall Lodge in the United States, are they officially and internally recognized by the Freemasonry?
I have no idea.
Because that's another question. They might be officially, but not internally recognized.
I don't know. Then you also have to look at fraternities as well. Because you have fraternities that are Greeks or whatever the fuck. But then you have fraternities that are also Masons. Like the Fraternal Order of Police are Masons.
I'm just wondering if a lot of the KKK groups and the Masons groups are some way getting resources from the Freemasonry and that they share membership.
They're Masons. The Bible is called the Quran. They're Masons. The KKK and the the Nation of Islam had worked together to form a pact. The Nation of Islam is the only black group that weren't attacked by the police. They were, I wouldn't say attacked, or dismantled by the police, I should say. Every other group that came out, besides that has been non-peaceful, has been dismantled. We got Black Panthers, White Panthers, Freedom Force, the Freedom Riders, even when they were peace and stuff like that. The NRI, Nation of Islam, has also signed up with Scientology. But yet, Farrakhan would say he against Jews, he against whites and this and that. So if you really pay attention to him, his son is married to a Jew. So they follow Masonry. Whether it's white Masonry or black Masonry, Masons are what rule this country.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's acknowledged publicly is a 33 degrees. When you go beyond a 33 degrees to the 360, that stuff is not known what goes on. And I think a lot of that is instrumental in the direction of this country and the world. And I don't think the other lodges that are mixed race or African American share with them that same vision, nor do they acknowledge or are aware of it.
I think the need to be inclusive, to be integrated,
right,
has kept a lot of minorities that have their own lodges, silent. They need to be secretive. They need to have brotherhood and to imitate the lodges. Because I asked, this one guy came into my house to put in cable, and he had the necklace on, the Mason necklace. And I asked him questions and stuff like that. And yeah, I asked him, I said, how can you be a Mason and you can't be a full Mason because you're black? And he said, we do the best we can. You know what I'm saying? So I never understood that shit to begin with.
Yeah. I'm just the foundation of Freemasonry was based on white supremacy. I mean, that's not acknowledged publicly, but I think that might be innate in the organization itself.
You said Freemasonry?
Yeah, Freemasonry, not necessarily Masonry itself, Freemasonry.
I want to say, right, cause not at the start, because you got to understand, when all that Freemasonry came to be, it was a majority white society. We had all sorts. We have all types of organizations that came out. The Macaroni Club, what was that? The Fools, I forgot what they called themselves. But all these societies that existed just as long as Freemasonry, well, Masonry and Freemasonry, they were all white to begin with. So I would say it was culture. I wouldn't say it was, they had nothing to fear from black people.
Wouldn't that culture, given the extent of the history of Masonry, I would like to use the word fabricate a philosophy and their historical perspective, how white folk are superior to any other race, and that might be the founding principles that they use in their pursuits?
Yeah, I think so. I also think that it might not have been intentionally at first. I mean, if you have a slave that is beneath you, you already have that mentality to begin with. It's not something that you would think about.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I mean, do you think about your dog stealing all the time? I mean, you don't think about, you tell a dog what to do. You don't think about the dog's freedom.
Yeah.
You know, the dog's supposed to be out in the wild, running around. He's in your house. You know? So you have to understand that if you are white in America, way back in those days, you did not think about black people because you already had the up and up. You was more concerned with other groups, political views, you know, your agenda versus their agenda, stuff like that. But as time came up, it became racist because you start seeing black people getting a foothold. You got the marches, you got the protests. So yeah, then you said, okay, we can't let these black people come into our organization. Then it becomes racist. But at first, they weren't even thinking about that shit. So that's my belief. I could be wrong, but that's my perception.
Well, I think what needs to happen is something in the form of a subpoena on the white Caucasian-based, the Anglo-Saxon-based Freemasonry on all their philosophies and written documents that they keep sealed above the 33 degrees. I think there's something in there systematic in their thinking that makes them feel superior to any other race. And I don't know what it is. I could venture and theorize that there's some archaeological history that puts them in that place. Maybe even that we're from different planets. Who knows? There's some history that's kind of like paving that into the future. And we need to be able to all sit on the same seat, recognize what that is, and discuss it to become, more together. And if we don't know what's being systematically used to divide us, then we won't have any power against it.
See, the danger in that is one, you're how can I say, you're asking an institution to open a secret that is being funded by the institution that is private. So, for instance, if you form a club and you have ways of doing things, and you become huge, say it's a big like Scientology, and you practicing your beliefs and stuff, and you're not hurting anybody, but there's somebody that says you want to send a subpoena and you want to open up and into your philosophy.
Well, is like a non-disclosure agreement. Prominent figures within all the institutions come together. They sign a non-disclosure agreement and observe all the things that they keep secret and have a quorum, an agreement, unity.
What is you exactly looking for?
I don't know. I'm making a wild dart in the dark that there is some kind of literature they're going by that's shaping the way they think.
Well, the literature that they're going by is basically, so some would say Bible, some would say the combination of the Bible, the Quran, and Judaism.
Well, those are things we know about.
Yeah, but honestly, what I think is a little bit more pagan. And here's the thing. Every society, every secret society have their origin, and they have their philosophy, and they have their people. Those people could belong to a Mason, and they belong to another society at the same time. You have a fraternity for this that is also a Mason. You see, and I think what really is going on is not necessarily the belief structure. I believe it's more of the culture. So regardless of all men are created equal, that's the doctrine that the United States is founded on. But within the culture of the United States of America, it's not true. You see? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Regardless of what literature that they go by, that's just something they put on the wall.
Yeah.
So under that, this is what really is going on, and you'll never know.
Right. Yeah. Because people don't know what they stand on culturally.
Mm-hmm.
I think the internal aspect of what's running this country, which I think is the Freemasonry, is systematic and creating that ether or void that people are standing on in fear and suspicion. And
Here's the thing. I'm going to put it to you like this. I don't mean to sound racist, but majority of the time, when you see trouble in an institution, and it's not, you see the minorities that are the ones in trouble, it is because of not just racism, but fear.
yeah, that's the number one thing that is used to get people to fight amongst each other is the lack of understanding.
Right. So now, here's something that I saw a post on my thread on Facebook, and it's not my friend, it's a friend of a friend, and she said that protesters are rioting, shooting cops in their head, they're slitting their throat. And I'm like, where are you getting your information from? Who the fuck is going around slitting people? Can you imagine that shit? Can you imagine a black person slicing a police officer's throat and getting away with it? They don't understand what being labeled a cop killer is. What goes down in the community, everything gets shut the fuck down and police are kicking in doors. You know what I'm saying? They don't understand that shit. So it's easy for them to stay and believe the horrific stories that somebody putting down the line on their Facebook. Oh, they cutting people's throats. They shooting cops in the back of the head. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's the fear, and it's the belief of the boogeyman.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always a
That's what it is.
And also, what that does, as we saw with Al Qaeda, is we turned an ally from the Soviet Union into our enemy by framing them as the enemy. What came first, framing them as enemy, or them becoming our enemy?
They became our enemy.
Yes, and that same methodology, that same tactic, is being used in our own population because of our difference in color.
People forget Bin Laden was our ally.
Say again?
I said a lot of people forget that Bin Laden was our ally.
Who was our ally? Oh, Al Qaeda, right? Yeah.
Bin Laden, yeah, he was our ally. He was the leader of and our ally.
Yeah, against the Soviet Union.
So the reason why I say his name, because if you say Bin Laden now, they go think 9/11. And he is, and to be honest, I don't think he had anything to do with that shit.
No, I don't think they killed him either. He died of natural causes. What I hear is he died of dialysis.
Maybe.
So, but that's right there. Well, that's just commentary there.
So if you want to get to the root of systematic racism, you have to go down. You have to just deal with the reality of racism. And if you want to find commonality amongst people, you got to think about the white minority when they came into this country. How many white minorities who got came from Italy, Spain, Ukraine, all these white minorities came into this country, and they had to go against the Europeans.
Yeah.
The prejudice against the Europeans. They had to change their name. They couldn't speak their language culturally. Like you think we have all these communities that are Greektown, Ukraine, Little Village, all this shit.
Yeah, they bunched together because of that divide that started in their upbringing, their evolution in this country.
Right. But since then, I mean, I think late 90s, all of a sudden, you got this all-white club. So now, because of you white, you're good, regardless of what you speak. But within those communities, they still have problems. They still have issues with other people. It's just not publicized. They still have hard times coming up because they're Polish or you can tell their accents and stuff like that. They're not fluent in their English. You have them still being undocumented immigrants or illegal aliens in this country. Majority of the legal aliens in this country are white, Asian, and African. But they focus on the Mexican because they don't want to ruffle the feathers of the white minority that are also illegal immigrants. A lot of people don't want to realize that. There's a lot of illegal immigrants that's in this country that's white as hell, and they hiding from ICE. So when you mention illegal immigrants, they automatically think south of the border.
That kind of relates to what my friend said on social media. My friend Michael, he says that when there are cracks, the light gets through. And my response to that is, who is looking at the light?
Nobody.
Exactly.
Everybody's focusing on what's happening to them.
Nobody sees the light.
I guarantee you, the majority of the protesters outside that's marching with white people right now, 5 months from now, the black people will be like, fuck white people. They march hand in hand with those white motherfuckers for five months from now. One of those black people, majority of those black people will be like, fuck white people. I'm going to tell you why. Because they have not befriended the people who they were walking in solidarity with. They have not changed their perception as well. Just like the people who are dying in the pandemic, I heard a lot of black people literally say, they trying to kill, even my cousin said it. They produced this virus to kill black people. I'm like, really? What about all these white people that's dying? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see the news,
Yep.
you hear the numbers,
Yep.
but you still think they just created this virus to kill black people. So it goes both ways. The fear mongering of whites and the fear mongering of blacks.
The virus,
whether it's logical or illogical.
it's like a test virus to see what they could do, to see how people respond with the depopulation campaign. What do you think?
Here's the thing about that. Now, there's a program on a series called Pandemic on Netflix. And one of the scientists said, you do not control the virus, you attack the virus. And I came up with a lot of ideas of how this government could have stopped the virus. And they want to stop the spread. Then I heard Trump say more people died. This was like when the virus started. He said more people died in the flu epidemic. I was like, what? And then I looked at the flu epidemic. And here's the thing, man. I say, if you go back 3 months, the flu pandemic and the coronavirus pandemic, the coronavirus probably exceeded the flu pandemic by 300 or 400, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm like, where were the mass bodies of graves were going on with the flu? Well, I mean, we had the vaccine. How come we was just shut down? And some people say, well, look, man, we have the vaccine for this virus. We don't have the vaccine for the coronavirus. I'm like, no, that's not my point. My point is this. If you have vaccine for a virus and you see all this stuff going on, why did you not shut the cities down and make sure everybody's been vaccinated instead of giving them the choice?
Yeah.
Right now, we are shut the fuck down. We're waiting for a virus. Now they're gradually open and doing all this bullshit.
Right.
Where were these motherfuckers when there's people were dying by the thousands from the fucking flu? That's my point. And on top of that, you have a vaccine.
It's not just the vaccine. They got the anti-malaria, and that's been proven to be effective towards people that actually have the virus in recovery. I think the vaccine, all these medications that are being pushed by the pharmaceutical industry, they're just pill pushers. They want to make a profit. $1,000 a pill. There's a lot of.
I understand that. I do understand that. You have a valid point. But my point is this. You have people dying by the thousands from a flu that you have to cure. How is that any different?
Yeah.
From the I don't see you digging a big ass hole in the ground and dumping dead bodies in that motherfucker.
Well,
I don't see people putting on masks and they can't go to the fucking funeral. I don't see a truck full of dead bodies parked outside the funeral home.
Right, and the hospitals are empty.
Exactly. I don't see the fluctuation and the spike of hospitals being overwhelmed.
Yeah, a lot of it's manufactured. I did a Benford analysis on the number of cases. It started out at the very beginning to follow the Benford curve, and then it deviated from that real quick, and it stayed consistent in its distribution of deviation up until now. I've been checking it because I wrote a script on my server that takes the data from the New York Times stash. They get it from the Hopkins University, and it checks it every day. I look at it every so often. It's still consistently way off the Benford curve. Now, the number of deaths, however, follows the Benford curve. So the total number of deaths is accurate, but it doesn't prove whether or not that means that they died of COVID or they died of something else and were labeled COVID in order to get more money.
Or they died from a heart attack, but COVID started.
Thank you for listening to Under the Skies, Troubled Ground.